What a freaking game that was on Friday night as Iowa takes care of business on the road, beating Rutgers 38-28. Roller coaster ride of emotions. I mean, you talk about the beginning of the game, Caden Weegan returning the kick return to the defense, ultimately looking like shit that first quarter, to the offense sort of carrying us most of the game, but then there was a little bit there in the middle that they didn't look very good, and then the defense stepped up, and then we give up a touchdown late, and it kind of feels like it's over, and special teams great, then moments of not so great, just up and down, but ultimately Iowa got the job done, and I get it. You know, people listening to this show that are maybe not Iowa fans, or maybe some Iowa fans, might look at this game and be like, well, it is Rutgers after all, so let's calm down a little bit. And I understand that. I will say, though, I do think this Rutgers team is not the typical Rutgers. I think we have it planted in our mind that just because Rutgers usually isn't very good, that they're always going to be bad. But I do think that this Rutgers team, given their wide receivers, given their experience at quarterback, now, yes, their defense isn't that great, but that team looks like a 7 or 8 win team with their wide receivers. I think they're going to pose a lot of challenges for a lot of defenses throughout the year. When you talk about one wide receiver who's 6'6", another one who's 6'3", it's challenging. And we were definitely challenged, especially in that first quarter. And that's why, you know, I just love the win. And then given the fact that you were on the road, you were playing in a hostile environment, it was a record crowd for Rutgers. I think it was like over 55,000. And that's something with Rutgers. And I'm not taking shots at them, but it does seem like their crowds, especially if the season maybe doesn't go the way what they wanted, they're not going to show out. And the crowd's going to be like half empty. Well, like a game like this, it's early in the season. They're 3-0. It's a blackout. They're playing Iowa, a team that to them is kind of their kryptonite, and they never beat us. And they showed out, and they were loud, and they were ready to roll. And so for Iowa to kind of weather that storm, just a massive win for us. And I couldn't be more proud. So we're going to talk about that game. And as you can see here, I am by myself. If you're watching this on YouTube, Tyler is gone. So I'm going to do a solo episode, and probably won't be as long since it's just by myself, but we'll get into the game from the other night, and then we'll get into a little bit about the Indiana game, because, man, I watched that game last night against Illinois. Whew, they look good. And so we'll get into a little bit about that towards the back end of this episode. But yeah, let's get into the game. And I really don't know where to start, because there's so many storylines for this game in particular, from the defense to the offense, special teams, that it's really hard to kind of pick and choose which one to begin with. Typically on this show, we do talk offense first. It just seems like most games, that is the focus point. Usually our defense does what it needs to do most games, and then there's really not a whole lot to talk about. But for this particular episode, I am going to start with the defense first, because that first quarter was probably one of the worst starts defensively that I can ever recall under Phil Parker. Now, yes, you could go back to last year against Michigan State and against UCLA, but I think on Friday night, it was worse than those two games from last year. First quarter for Rutgers, they had 8 first downs. They had 195 total yards. They were averaging 8.9 yards per play. Athan was 12 for 14. And they were 4 for 4 on third down. I mean, that is as bad as you can get. And it seemed like every time they had the ball, they went right down the field. It was not pretty. It was not good. I was a little worried going into this game. I think Tyler was even more worried about this. I think maybe a day or two before the game, we were talking on the phone, and he was really worried about their wide receivers, given, you know, they are very underrated. I don't think a lot of people talk about the duo that they have at Rutgers, in the size and the physicality and really the strength. And when you look at the matchup, and maybe we didn't think about this as much going into this game, but when you have a wide receiver that's 6'6", another one that's 6'3", and your corners are 6 foot and 5'10", Yeah, it's gonna pose a challenge for your defense, no doubt. And give credit to Rutgers because they came out, they looked at Iowa's film and they pretty much said, we have no faith in Iowa secondary, so we are going to attack and we're going to attack some more. That was good by Rutgers. Now, I am worried about this defense, no doubt, but I will say I did like the response because we could have easily, after the first quarter and the way it was looking, it could have been like that the entire freaking game. And you knew that eventually Rutgers would come down to the mean a little bit, but it was looking like, man, this could be like we could give up 50 points this game if we don't figure something out. If they're just going to keep taking deep shots and when they don't connect, it's a pass interference. And if it's not pass interference, they catch it. I mean, this could be a long game. Well, the last three quarters, Rutgers finished with 12 first downs the last three quarters. So first quarter, 8, last three quarters, only 12. They only had 205 total yards the last three quarters. So almost just as many as the first quarter. Their yards per play went from 8.9 to 4.3, which is really good. And Ethan finished in the second, third, and fourth quarter. He was 12 for 26 instead of 12 for 14. So definitely dropped off a little bit. And then the key one right here is 2 for 9 on third downs. We finally were able to get off the field. That was something, go back to like the Michigan State game last year where we struggled so much, we couldn't get off the field. I mean, it just seemed like every third down they connected and bam, 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 they went right down the field. So for us to be able to, like I said, kind of weather the storm a little bit, 2 for 9 on third down the last three quarters, that is really big. And really at halftime, Rutgers came out in the second half and it was punt. It was 2 3 and outs, which was huge. Now we didn't, as an Iowa team, we didn't really capitalize per se on those 2 3 and outs. I think Iowa maybe got a field goal on maybe that second 3 and out, but that was something where you started feeling a little bit better about the defense in the second half. You knew that we went into halftime, probably got an ass chewing by Phil, but also made some key adjustments to figure things out. And after rewatching the game, no doubt does our secondary have issues. But I thought there were certain plays, and maybe you could chalk this up as an excuse, but I don't really think. I think if you go back and you rewatch the game, you'll agree with me that there were a couple plays where we were in position. TJ Hall, even there was, I think maybe even a play for Deshaun Lee, where we were in position. We were right there. They just made the better play. They just executed better. And credit to their wide receivers, credit to Ethan for putting the ball where it needs to be. But then, their wide receivers, making some great catches. But there were definitely a few plays where I really thought that, man, I don't know how you could play that play any better. I mean, it's just one of those things where there were certain plays where it just didn't go our way. But it's definitely something, though, we do need to figure out because watching the Illinois-Indiana game last night and seeing what Indiana did against Illinois' defense, granted, Illinois was without some key players on defense, but that doesn't matter. I mean, what Indiana did to them, they carved up Illinois' defense. And if our defense looks like it did in the first quarter of the Rutgers game against Indiana, it's going to be a long day. I don't care if it's in Kinnick Stadium. I don't care if it's in Bloomington, Indiana. You are going to have a long day if that's what the defense is going to look like. So we definitely have problems. We definitely need to address some things. I think it starts with 3 players in particular that need to either step up or we need to figure out something. Maybe 2. You can maybe say 3. First one is Jaden Harrell at linebacker. I mean, I have not seen the improvement from him each and every game. You were kind of hoping that you would start seeing that improvement. I have not seen it yet. I just have not. And it's getting to the point where, okay, we do have some younger guys where they're going to be the future of the linebacker room. They might struggle a little bit if they get in there because they're younger, but hey, building that experience for down the road. And so that's an option. I mean, do we go with somebody else? Do we go with Jaden Montgomery, who is a junior, or do we go with one of the younger guys? And then at corner, Deshaun Lee. The problem with him is he's undersized. He's 5'10", and there are players out there. There are corners out there that are 5'10", right? But they make up for it by being athletic and just making plays. And unfortunately, Deshaun Lee, not only is he undersized, I just don't think he's that athletic enough to be a true lockdown corner. And the only thing going for him right now is experience. He's played a lot of games. He's been in a lot of moments, and that is what's helping him. And it's probably why he's still the starter. But I just don't see it. I mean, we have seen game in and game out, 2-3 years of this. It's the same old with Deshaun Lee. So got to figure that out. I don't know what you do there. Do you just continue going with the guy that has a lot of experience, or do you go with Jalen Watson, who is about the same size as Deshaun Lee, but does he maybe have a little bit more of an upside? Or do you go with Godfrey, who's a little bit taller? And then the third player, and I'm not calling for his job because I do think he's still pretty good, but to me, Xavier is just not the 5-star that we thought we were getting. There were a couple plays in particular against Rutgers that I was questioning, like, what are you doing, X? What are you doing right now? And so he's just a player to me that just needs to step up. He needs to play like he is that 5-star. He needs to play like the guy that we thought we were getting a few years ago, where it was one of the best recruits in program history, and he just hasn't really lived up for it. Not saying he's had an awful year. He's definitely better this year than he was last year. But for this defense to really grow and really be good, you got to have your 5-star be great. It's as simple as that. So yeah, I'm obviously definitely concerned about this defense, no doubt about it, especially when you see who we play next week, and Penn State down the road, and Oregon down the road, and USC down the road. Definitely got to figure some things out. We got to hope that our defensive line continues to grow. I think that's maybe the last thing I'm going to talk about with the defense. The beginning of the game, zero pressure. Our defensive line literally didn't do anything. I mean, they were a non-factor. Even Rutgers rushing the football in the first quarter and a half, they were getting what they needed to do. But credit to the defensive line, they really stepped up both in pass and in run, because in the run game, they completely shut down Rutgers every time they tried to run the ball. And Rutgers didn't really want to run the ball, but you kind of have to. You can't pass every single play. And credit to Iowa's defensive line and just defense in general for stopping the run, right? Get the run stopped. Force them to be one-dimensional, even though they are pretty good at passing, but force them to be just that and that alone. And then you get them in obvious passing situations, and then that is when you can roll out Ethan Hurkett and Max Llewellyn and really apply that pressure. I think they finish, I'll have to look here, they finished with only 70 yards rushing. They averaged 2.3 rush yards per play. So definitely not very good. And that really helped us down the stretch of that game. All right, let's switch to the offense now, because if we didn't have this year's offense, we do not win this game. It's as simple as that. If we don't have Mark Gronowski, we don't win this game. Now, was Mark perfect by any stretch of the imagination? No. But you guys know I have defended Mark even after the Albany game. I was trying to find the silver lining. Hey, he did look better as the game went on before he started cramping up, right? Things like that. Because I trust in what Mark can do. I saw what he did at South Dakota State. I saw him throw for over 10,000 yards. You don't just lose that overnight. He is a winner. He is a gamer. He has swag. It was going to come eventually. Might be some growing pains, but you knew at some point it was going to happen. And I thought the other night was his coming out party, honestly. I mean, you could say maybe the UMass game, but let's face it, it's UMass. You're at home. UMass is absolutely terrible. But it was still good to see, because you want to do that against bad teams. But this game on the road in a hostile environment, sold out crowd, blackout, with our defense giving up points, it was up to Mark in that offense to figure some things out, and they did. Now, once again, there were two plays in particular that I thought, Mark, you got to execute, and that was right before half when it was 3rd down and 3. He had, I think it was Zach Ortworth wide open for a first down, or maybe it was DJ Vanami. I can't remember. It was a tight end, and he just missed him. And then towards the end of the game, and this one was really bad, and thankfully he made up for it on the next drive, connecting with Dayton Howard. But he had, I think this was Zach Ortworth, wide open for a touchdown. And I think it was almost kind of like a basketball play, when you're so wide open for a three, you don't really realize how wide open you are. And then you completely miss it because it's just like, oh my God, how am I so wide open? And I just think Mark, he saw him last second. He saw how wide open he was. And I don't know, mentally, I don't know what happened there, but it was a really bad throw. Really bad throw. Although looking at the replay, I think you can blame both guys because it was a really bad throw by Mark. But at the same time, I do think that Ortworth needs to catch that ball. I think it was Ortworth. I would have to go back. If it's not, I apologize. I think it was Ortworth. I mean, I know it was low, but it was literally in your fingertips. You got to catch that ball. But just a bad throw by Mark. And so you take away those two plays. Once again, Mark, I thought had a fantastic game. 12 for 18, 186 yards, 67% completion percentage. And, maybe the negative people out there will be like, oh, another game where, our quarterback can't get over 200 yards, but he only had 18 attempts. We did what we needed to do. And we're still a running football team. We're still going to run the football a decent amount. We had 38 run plays that game. And so, which was a lot more than 18 passing plays. So Mark did what he needed to do. 186 yards. I don't care if 186 yards, 300 yards. He was efficient, and that is what you want out of your quarterback. And not only that, but then you look at his running. And this is something that I said after the Albany game, trying to find some of the silver linings out of that game was, okay, yes, his passing wasn't great. But what I did see in that game was the ability to do those quarterback power runs, especially on 3rd and short or 4th and short. And you saw that towards the end of the game, especially that drive after we got the interception where it kind of felt like the game was over, but it was still like, well, there is 4 minutes left. Rutgers still has all their timeouts. We got to get a few first downs here. And we just kept kind of doing those quarterback power runs. And he was generating a lot of yards each play. And that is something that we just have not had at the quarterback position. I guess in a way, Brendan Sullivan last year, but Mark he's obviously better than Brendan, and he protects himself way more than Brendan does. Brendan was so loose and careless every time he ran. It was like every time he ran, you felt like he was going to get popped. Mark is very careful with his body. He understands not to get forcefully hit. And that is what is good to see. But yeah, he finished with 13 carries for 55 yards, and he had 3 rushing touchdowns. Didn't have a passing touchdown. You still want to see that improve. You want to get a few passing touchdowns, but 3 rushing touchdowns from Mark. And then getting Kamari Moulton back was massive for us. 14 attempts, 68 yards, clearly our best running back. I said that on the last podcast with Tyler, that I like Jazz Patterson. I like Xavier Williams, but we need to get our solidified starter back. Getting him back was the perfect time, right? Because I think a lot of people thought that he probably wouldn't be back until the Indiana game. And then when you heard Kirk on Tuesday say, yeah, there's a chance he'll play, I thought, I think a lot of people got excited because it's like, yeah, that's huge. Like we need him, especially with Xavier Williams out. We need Kamari back, and for him to come out there. And not only that, but he also had 3 catches for 21 yards in the passing game, which was big time as well. So getting him back was huge. But yeah, going back to Mark Gronowski quick. Another thing too, if you look at Mark's stats, you have to keep in mind that first drive, which was probably arguably maybe the worst drive of the game. On that 3rd down, he had Sam Phillips perfectly thrown ball. I don't know how, maybe it was 30, 40 yards down the field. Perfectly thrown ball. Sam Phillips needs to catch that. Those are plays where, like that play where it was a perfectly thrown ball, or maybe the 2 plays where they weren't perfectly thrown balls. Those type of plays is where, like, man, that's where I get excited because you're seeing the offense steadily improve, but there is still way more that we can do. There is still that next step that we can take, and you see that. We just got to start executing. We just got to be better in certain situations, and we can really take this thing to the next level, which is really cool to see, or really good to see. And that's what gets me excited, because you're seeing the progress with this offense from the first game, and in particular, Mark Gronowski. I mean, from the first game to now, we are steadily improving each and every game. And that is what you want to see, especially with an offense. Let's face it, it's been bad for so long. You want to see that improvement each and every game. And Mark, you're starting to see him get a little bit more comfortable out there. He's starting to make plays, and he's starting to look like the quarterback that won 2 national championships at the FCS level at South Dakota State. You're starting to see that swagger with him, something that we really thought we were going to get with Cade McNamara, and unfortunately, we just did not get that with him. And you're just starting to see the reason why we paid Mark what we paid him to come into Iowa and win us football games, because I'm going to say it. If we don't have Mark Gronowski there tonight, if we have Cade McNamara or Brendan Sullivan and no shots at them, I just don't think we win this game. I just don't. Maybe you'll disagree with me. You can put in the comments on YouTube or whatever, but I do not think we win that game if we don't have Mark Gronowski at quarterback. He did exactly what he needed to do at times. The perfectly thrown ball to Dane Howard, which we should talk a little bit about that, because I've been calling for Dane Howard to play for the last few weeks. I told Tyler that maybe after the Iowa State game. Where is Dane Howard at? He's 6'4", 6'5". He's a big-bodied wide receiver. Dane Howard doesn't really need to create separation because he's so tall that, he might win that one-on-one, right? Just throw it up to him. He might win that one-on-one. So I said, until Reese comes back, man, we got to start playing Dane Howard. I think he is a mismatch out there for teams, especially if he's lining up against a corner that's not very big. And here's another thing that maybe some people will forget about, but I think the play before, maybe 2 plays before Dane Howard had that big catch, he drew a holding penalty that would have been 4th down, and we would have had to punt the football because we were backed up. And he drew a holding penalty. So it's plays like that where it's not going to be on the stat sheet, but guys hold for a reason because they are not in position, and they know they're about ready to get burned, so they start holding. And Dane Howard, I just think he needs to play more moving forward. I really do, and I hope this week against Indiana you see him out on the field more times than not. I also thought, and going back to the Iowa State game, I called for, maybe I was just so annoyed by Kane Weegan, but I called for, I think the time is up for him being out there at wide receiver. But I did like the way we utilized him, especially on that 3rd down. Do a quick little route for him to get him open and then watch him fly, right? It was like a 5-yard out, easy pass and catch, and then he turned upfield for probably another 15 yards. So if you want to start doing that with Caden, I'm okay with him being out there, but him running deep routes and things like that, I just don't know if he's the answer for that. But I did like the way we kind of schemed him open on that one particular play. Let's continue more of that. And then the last thing with the offense, Tim Lester, man, what a great game. What a great freaking game for Tim Lester and that play calling. So as we move forward here, we got Indiana coming up. We saw what they did against Illinois last night. I'm recording this on Sunday, by the way. 63-10 was the final score. Now, Indiana is a fantastic team. They are really good. It does make you wonder a little bit, though, how overrated was Illinois? Because, if you're the ninth-ranked team in the country, I don't care how good Indiana is, you should not lose 63-10. You should not do that. So I don't know what the hell happened there. But yeah, this Indiana team, really freaking good. And it's a game I wrote on the boards on 24/7 last night that we are going to have to play our best football, right? We're going to have to limit mistakes, right? Mark Gronowski so far this year has had only 1 turnover, and it was because a wide receiver slipped. We got to continue that. 0 turnovers on offense. We got to play perfect football in all 3 phases, including special teams. We need to be special on Saturday, right? And special teams so far this year, I began the episode talking about how this particular game against Rutgers was roller coaster ride of emotions. Well, for the special teams, it's been like that the entire year, where one moment we look great, next moment we don't. Saturday, special teams has to be special. Offense needs to continue the momentum. Defense, you got to figure it out. Got to play like you did the last 3 quarters against Rutgers. But I think the one advantage that Iowa has, because I think Indiana has the advantage in almost every category, especially after watching that Illinois game. But the one advantage that Iowa has is we are inside Kinnick Stadium. And myself and every single fan that is going to that game on Saturday, we have to be the 12th man. We have to be ready. We have to be loud. We have to be in it every single down that Indiana is on offense. This is Indiana's first true road game of the year. We have to be louder than shit. This has to be 2021 against Penn State loud, where we get them a little rattled. Go back to last year against Iowa State, where that first half, Rocco Beck, he was not Rocco Beck, right? We had that dude rattled so hard. Unfortunately, we made a mistake in the second half that just kind of got them going. But that is what we need. We need the north end zone. We need just the entire stadium rocking on Saturday. The first two games, I thought Kinnick's atmosphere has been pretty good this year. It's hard to get into some of those games when it's blowouts and when it's against bad teams. This is the game, though. This is the first. I mean, Indiana's going to be, I'm recording this before the AP poll comes out, but I imagine Indiana's going to be top 15 in the country. This will be the first ranked team that we play inside Kinnick since 2022. It needs to be rocking. That is our one advantage. We need to get them rattled. And the last thing I will say with this Indiana game, college football is weird, man. College football is weird. Just because one game, this team looks absolutely dominant, doesn't mean that the next game they're just going to come out and do the same thing. College football is weird, man. I mean, you saw Oregon last week or 2 weeks ago. They beat Oklahoma State, what was it, 70-something-0. And then they go on the road at Northwestern, and yeah, they still won, but they didn't kill Northwestern. It wasn't an ass beating like they did against Oklahoma State. Every week is different. And so we can't get too caught up in what happened yesterday. That doesn't mean, like, I'm not trying to say that Indiana's not that good, because they are really freaking good. Coach Cignetti is a hell of a freaking coach, and we are in Iowa is going to have to be perfect to even be in this game. That is what I'm saying. But I will say, though, that we can't get too caught up in what happened the previous week. We got to focus on the specific game, and we just got to do what we got to do. And this game is massive for Iowa. I mean, you think about if we can somehow, some way, especially after Indiana beat Illinois the way they did, 63-10. If we're coming on this podcast next Sunday with a win going into a bye week, I mean, yes, it sucks that we lost to Iowa State, but we're 2-0 in the Big Ten. We just beat a top 15 team at home. We're feeling pretty damn good about things, right? Especially because the next game after that is Wisconsin, and they're not looking very good. And then you got Penn State at home. So everything's out in front of you. And that's why the Rutgers game, frankly, was so important that we got that win, because, I mean, I really can't imagine what we would be feeling like right now for 2-2 going to the Indiana game. I'm sure the atmosphere would still be good inside Kinnick, but it would definitely be deflating if we would have lost that game the other night. So getting that win the other night was huge. And so, yeah, I'm really looking forward to it. I just think for Iowa, you got to limit the possessions that Indiana has on offense. Illinois did a really bad job at that. They offensively, Illinois last night, number one, they couldn't run the football. I think they finished with 2 yards rushing, and then they got sacked a lot. They weren't sustaining drives. And that was a bad thing, because then Indiana was out there what seemed like the entire game offensively. And it gave Illinois no time to rest on defense or no time to make adjustments. And so for Iowa, you got to sustain drives. Even if you're not scoring, sustain some drives, right? Keep the time of possession in your hand. And then once again, hope for the best. Hope that the Kinnick crowd is loud. Hope that Indiana makes a few mistakes. Find a way, right? Where I saw that we are 6.5 point underdog. Let's shock the world next week. That's all I got to say with that. But all right, well, that will do it for this episode. Thank you guys all for listening. We will be back next Sunday going over the Iowa-Indiana game. I'm really excited for that game. 2:30 game on Peacock, which is kind of crazy. That game's on Peacock, but it is what it is. But yeah, I'll be at that game. We'll be cheering loud because we got to be loud. Every single play. The fans have to be into it, and got to hope for the best. It'd be a massive win, and it'd be our first ranked win in quite a long time since 2021 against Penn State. I think we've lost 10 straight versus ranked teams, and we got to flip the script there, and hopefully that happens this upcoming Saturday. All right, well, that will do it. Thank you guys all for listening, and go Hawks.